What's up, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of On the Bluff. I'm your host, Christian Fowler, back this week, and joining me, as always, my co-host, Gabe Kuhn. And Gabe, we have officially reached the century mark of On the Bluff, episode 100.
Who'd have thunk it? Not me.
Not me. Not me.
Golly, how about it, man? We've been doing this a while. Appreciate everybody who's been able to listen. We don't say that enough, but always talk to people around town who enjoy the podcast. And we obviously love your listenership and your engagement with everything. So just wanted to put that out there, not to be sappy. I'll stop being sappy in a second, but really cool to be at episode 100, man. We've been doing this quite a while. It doesn't necessarily feel that way.
No, it doesn't. It's really cool, too. We talked about this on your show a couple weeks ago, but since we're at episode 100, I'll revisit it on here. Me and you have been doing stuff together since 2019 now, when we started doing Film Room, where we would literally watch clips and break down the clips of Memphis football games, and that was somehow 5 years ago. And here we are in 2024, a year into On the Bluff at episode 100. So just to reiterate what Gabe said, obviously we always appreciate you guys listening. All the comments that we get from you guys, like Gabe said, when we're around town, it happens a lot when we're together too.
Yeah. And what's funny too, people think we're like always together.
Yeah.
Like we're honestly like in public rarely together unless there's like an event or something, or we like predetermine something. But you live a little farther out. You live there in Mississippi. I'm here in East Memphis. It's like it's hard to connect like that. But everybody, whenever I'm out, they're like, "Where's Christian?" I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know. Enjoying probably on vacation." That's what I tell them. Probably on vacation in Arizona or something like that. Yeah. Speaking of which, how was that? Fun?
Oh, dude, it was awesome. So my dad was actually born out there, so a lot of his family, aunts and uncles and stuff, still live out there. So we got to spend time with them. We were kind of all over the state. We flew into Phoenix, hit Sedona, Flagstaff, Page, Arizona, Scottsdale. We stayed in two different houses. So we did half of the time we were in Flagstaff, half of the time we stayed in Scottsdale. We were there for a week. So it was a long trip. Went to the Grand Canyon, went to Antelope Canyon, went to Mount Humphreys in Flagstaff, spent time with family, ate a bunch of good food. It was a great time. Felt like I was gone for 3 months. How much stuff
honestly,
we packed in.
A good time to go out there because it's getting nice and chilly around here.
Yeah.
The weather is beautiful.
Well, that's the weird part about Arizona. Like when we were staying up north in Flagstaff, which is
it's 60s, 70s probably.
Yeah, right? At night in the upper 30s, like there's snow there. Like we go up in the mountains and there's snow on the ground and stuff. So it's a lot of different climates in Arizona. Some days we were 60 degrees, at nights we were in upper 30s, and then we go to Scottsdale and we're like 97 during the day. So a lot of different weather out there, but it was a great time.
Yep. Now, I'll tell you my plans. The only update on me, which I don't have that many updates because I stay in the house because I have a baby boy on the way here. And
so close.
We're very, very close. Any day now, like I always say. But I got humbled. I guess this is like a rite of passage for a new dad. I got humbled by a crib, putting together a baby crib. Like it's something so small and petite that you just sort of put in a corner of a room. It's just crazy how many different moving parts and pieces there are. But hey, man, got it done. And I did it during a lot of it during the football game this weekend while I was watching Memphis and Charlotte duke it out.
You go back and forth.
and I swear, we're not going to open there. We're going to get to it, but they about put Taylor into early labor.
Oh, did they?
This weekend. Good God.
She was stressing.
She was saying it. She's like, if I go into early labor, I'm sending the bill to Silverfield.
That's hilarious.
And I was like, honestly, that seems fair. I think that's a fair trade-off.
That's hilarious. All right, well, we'll start, like you said, not on football. We'll start on Memphis basketball. They are currently in Huntsville to take on Alabama in an exhibition game. That's going on as we speak right now here on Monday night. You'll be watching this on Tuesday, so there's absolutely zero analysis we can give you from the exhibition.
We can say that there's a couple of injury things.
Right.
Like Musa Cisse is back healthy.
Yep.
Looks like Tyreek Smith after that whole saga that you missed out on. Luckily you missed out on that.
Yeah, I did.
I was talking to people and it sounded like the update that I got was they made him run for missing study hall one day and he just started throwing haymakers at him. like, where's my NIL money? Well, what about my role? You said I was going to be starting at the 4, But they made him run and it sort of things got said. But you missed that. He was out. He's out for tonight. And then Alabama. I don't know how much we're actually going to see because Alabama's without 3 starters and then 4 guys that play in their rotation, including those 3 starters. So it's like I don't know how much we're going to see, but it's still nice to get that type of game. Number 2 team in the country, seemingly on the road in Huntsville before the season gets here. But we can't really provide analysis because it's happening as we speak, as we're recording.
Yeah, no in-game analysis for the Alabama game, but Memphis's regular season starts next Tuesday. So as you're watching this, or next Monday. Sorry. Yep. So as you're watching this, 6 days away for us right now, a week away. But it's a good place to start. Missouri's not a top-tier team like some of these exhibition games that Memphis has played. But if you look at the KenPom rankings, they're 51. Memphis is 42. We know Missouri was a disappointing team last year. We expected
that's underselling it, brother. They didn't win an SEC game. They were horrible.
Yeah, especially after the season they had 2 years ago in 2022. Really, really solid, tough team that gave everybody a hard night out. Last year when Memphis played them, we thought, Memphis just beat a very good basketball team. That was not the case. They've kind of reloaded. They've got a solid roster. It should be a really good test to start the actual season for Memphis.
Yes, it should be, because Dennis Gates knows he's got to get it going. You can't have a defeated season in the SEC and SEC play. Even if you made the tournament a couple of years ago, you can't have that and expect to not be on the hottest of hot seats. So he knows he's got to get it going quick, and I'll give him credit. He went into the portal this offseason and made some additions that I think can put them in at least a competitive spot. Brought in Mark Mitchell from Duke. He brought in Tony Perkins from Iowa, who's a 14-point per game scorer. You still have Tamar Bates, who is their leading returning scorer with 13.5 points per game last year. You have some size there. Of course, Mark Mitchell adds to that, but you have Josh Gray, who's a 7-footer from South Carolina, went to LSU to start his career. You have a guy from Overtime Elite who's 7 foot, and Peyton Marshall. So you have a team that they have put together that's at least serviceable. On the paper, it's serviceable. They still have Caleb Grill, who was at Iowa State a couple years ago, really good contributor to TJ Otzelberger's team. So I just sort of look at this Mizzou team. It's going to be a nice test, but it's one that I think the Tigers, if they want to take themselves seriously, should pass. They really should pass this one.
Yeah, I agree. Kind of like we said, they're not a spectacular team, but this is just a really solid college basketball team, in my opinion. Like, I think they can. I think they'll upset some teams in the SEC this year. I think they'll have some of those games. They should be really competitive with some of the additions that they have, plus the guys that they have returning. So I think they're a solid team, and I think at least for a opening game matchup, I think it should give us a good idea for where Memphis stands right off the bat. I mean, obviously, things are going to change as the season progresses. This team should get better as the season rolls on. But with starting against North Carolina and Alabama and having these exhibition games, Memphis should be ready to play Missouri and to be able to walk out of that game with a win.
Yeah, and you're at home, so we know how road basketball is, no matter who it is. Like if it's an SEC team, if it's a really, top 15 team, it's really hard to play on the road in Memphis. And I think this is one of those games, especially first game of the year against a solid opponent, a power conference opponent. You should get that the FedEx Forum pretty packed for it, and it should be a fun one. Now for Memphis, like I'm still very curious about what this opening night rotation is going to look like. Obviously, you've had some injuries. You've been banged up. But, starters, I think you're looking at what we have been talking about. Tyrese Hunter, P.J. Haggerty, Colby Rogers, Nick Jourdain, and Dane Danger. But I want to see how that actually looks against some solid competition in the regular season when Memphis is running some things. In that North Carolina game, and obviously in all exhibitions, Penny kind of keeps everything close to the vest. Doesn't want to run a lot of things offensively. Doesn't really want to show anything to anybody. So I want to see like how these guys roll out there, what their chemistry looks like, and sort of how it goes from there. And then the rotation is going to be interesting because, Jared Harris, a freshman who we didn't really expect to play, it seems like he's going to get some minutes. You have to balance those with PJ Carter and Tyreek Smith. And, how deep is this bench going to go with a seemingly not so deep team necessarily, not the normal team where you can play 10 or 11 guys. It's going to be I think this year, as opposed to last year, is going to be even more of a learning experience. Because last year we knew what it was going to look like going into the season. You had 10 guys you were comfortable with rolling out there every night. We learned later that they didn't get along so well, so that changed. But this year, I think we're going to learn as we go who can actually go and who can't.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting too, because we've seen in Penny's tenure that it does take him some time to figure out his rotations and his lineups and what he feels like is optimal for the team. So does he have a better idea of that right now? Probably the biggest storyline we've had all offseason with Memphis basketball, at least from recruiting and on the floor stuff, is these guys being in since July and how big of a benefactor that is for the team. So does that help, shortening the rotation? Does that help with the lineups and the amount of rotations and how long the starters play versus, do we see the continued platoon swaps, or do we see 2 and 3 guys come out? I think it is, for any coach, for any team, it's a balancing act. It's something that you have to figure out with every specific team. But has the early arrival of these players given him more time to lock in on that and have a feeling of, these are the guys that I want on the floor together? When we make that first swap in the first half, who's coming in, who's coming out. So I think that'll be really interesting, because it's been something that a lot of people have been critical of Penny over. So does he have it locked in at the beginning of this year? And you don't get 10, 15 games down the road and you're still seeing new starting lineup combinations. And like I mentioned, the platoon swaps, like how does this all look from night one?
I know this has been an overrated and overused talking point this entire offseason, but I think it's like 2022, where like going into the year, you're asking yourself, okay, you have Kendrick Davis and DeAndre Williams. Who's going to be the supporting cast around them? Who's going to be the three-point shooter? As we saw as the season got along, even though he wasn't a good three-point shooter at his previous stop, Keontae Kennedy comes along and starts knocking down some threes. You feel good about that. Then you're like, okay, who's your defensive do-it-all ace? It ended up being Elijah McCadden as the season went along. I think you'll start to see guys separate themselves, but I don't know if you're going to know from night one. I just don't necessarily get that feeling with this team. I think they're going to still, as much as we talk about, they've been on campus since June, I still think there's going to be a growing and maturing period for this particular group. Last year, you just had a feeling that he was going, like he had so many different big name guys, he was going to get them all on the floor.
Yeah.
This year, I don't know if he necessarily has that. So if they've been struggling in camp and we don't know about that, they may get less minutes and we're going to be questioning that. So I just think because he's been so quiet, Penny, for the most part this offseason, it's just a lot more unknown about this team. Not necessarily a bad thing, but it's an unknown. And I think people want to know as soon as possible. And I think we'll get our first taste 6 days from now against Mizzou.
Absolutely. We alluded to at the top of the show, Memphis versus Charlotte, and that it almost put Taylor in the hospital for a time of having a child. Luckily, it did not. Memphis pulled this game out, but I feel like we're kind of just locking and reloading on the topic of conversation of the last 2 games, and that's the fact that it wasn't pretty. You did not gain any style points from it, but ultimately they were victorious. And it took a last-second comeback drive from Seth Hennigan, connecting with Rock Taylor. And still, I don't know how you felt watching it, but kind of at the end when you look up and there's like 35 seconds left and Charlotte had just went down the field quickly, it was like, man, they might have left too much time. Now, fortunately,
no, there was at the end of the game when they scored, when the Tigers scored,
they made some errors. They fielded the kickoff and the knee was down, and then it was kind of like, okay, we can breathe easy at this point. But they pulled it off. It was ugly on kind of both sides of the ball, really, in this game. But they won. They're 7-1, so there's only so much criticism we can have. But would have been a blowout. Would have been nice.
One thing about this team that just blows me away, at the end of the game, even though they went down 28-24, I thought it was embarrassing that it was even that close and you were trailing Charlotte with 1:30 to go.
100%.
But was there any doubt in your mind that they were going to go down and go score that touchdown? Like, I had no doubt in my mind, because this team is very much the type of team that chills when they have leads.
Yep.
And then they flip the switch when they decide that they want to play some offense, create some explosive plays, and they have to go create those explosive plays. We've seen it on 3 separate occasions this year. North Texas gave them a run for their money. Defense couldn't get a stop. So, hey, we have to open up this offense, get to more tempo, start rolling down the field. They score, what was it, 52 points
52.
Against freaking Navy. You saw early, oh, shit, this is getting out of hand. You still roll up and score 44 points.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You still were able to make that happen. And then in this game, as soon as they got out to a 21-7 lead, I think there were some people that had hope that they'd extended, but I'm sitting there, I'm like, they're going to let them back in this game. They're going to run it and waste possessions, let them stroll back into this game. So by the end, when Hassan Wilson ran it in from, 18 yards out, and there was a minute 36, I'm like, well, we'll see if the switch works. We'll see if they can flip it on and go score. And what do they do? The seam route, perfect to Anthony Landfier, right down the sideline to Rock Taylor, following that up for a touchdown. The execution they have and the aggression they have when they feel like their back's against the wall is what I need to see 100% of the time.
Yeah,
and that goes for play calling. That goes for the team and their execution and the shots that Seth Hennigan decides to take in those moments. I need to see that all the time. Doing it when you're, in a predicament is one thing, but you have to be able to extend leads and play with a lead, or a team by the time you get to the end of the year, say you're 10-1 against Tulane, that will bite you in the ass if you try to play that way against a team like that. So like you've played bad enough teams to where you can pull it out in the end, but stop leaving that up to chance. Stop putting yourself in these peculiar, tough situations all of the time because you play so conservatively throughout the middle part of the game. It's getting to be very frustrating because I see what their offense can do when they just unleash themselves and play aggressive and play not to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Right. But they don't do that all the time.
Yeah. And it would be one thing if the offense just wasn't good. And then it would be like, okay, they're finding a way. They're continually finding a way. Even though they're not a good offense, they're finding ways to pull it out. But clearly, like you're saying, when they need to turn it on, they can turn it on. And they're very good offensively when they do so. The only problem is they don't do it. They only do it at the beginning of the game. And if they need a score late in the game, not to extend the lead, but to win the game. It's not about extending the lead. It's always about, playing the clock game, playing the field position game and holding on to a win. And we said it at the beginning of the year when we saw the shades of it that they're going to lose a game because of this. And they haven't really yet because the Navy loss wasn't really in the same vein as some of these other games. But there's only so many times that you can sit there, take your foot off the gas, and coast before it happens.
It bites you in the ass.
And this week was really, really close. Really close. I mean,
it's a bad team, quite frankly. Too.
Very bad team.
It's truly bad team that doesn't have a quarterback figured out, that rotates in running backs willy-nilly. Yeah. It's not very good in the trenches. Like, you're just sitting there like, what the hell are you guys doing? Why are you dicking around with this team?
Yeah.
They're not good.
Yeah.
And like what got them back in the game, what was so frustrating, even defensively, you felt kind of weird. It's like conservative, flat game. Like Deshaun Purdy comes in the game, the big quarterback who just slings it downfield every chance. He can't hit anything intermediate or short.
Yeah.
You kept putting your cornerbacks, and I love Jordan Hankins. I think he's done a fine job for the most part, although it's been pretty shaky lately. You just leave your cornerbacks in one-on-ones. Why? All the guy wants to do is throw it 50 yards downfield and use his arm. So why are you putting your cornerbacks in that type of situation where they have to consistently win on one-on-ones? And I've seen since Ryan's been here in games like that, the North Texas game from last year, a really good example when Chandler Rogers was there, they were airing it out. This team, when you give them chances like that, a lot of these secondary members, no matter who it is, I mean, they've added a lot of guys to that secondary, but they seem to lose those types of jump balls in those situations constantly. So I just thought offense, defense, special teams, they need to figure out a kicker. I don't know what's going on there. Tristan Vandenberg and Caden Costa haven't been there. But offense, defense, special teams, they have yet to put together a game all the way through. And it is very frustrating to watch as someone who lives and breathes Tiger football. I know they're sitting here at 7-1 and like complaints should be at a minimal, but I hear the noise from most of the people on social media, most of the fans here, and I understand why there's frustration. Now, when it comes to being 7-1, there are worse positions to be in. Like, we totally understand that. But the loss to Navy has put you in a peculiar spot. You are sitting there at number 25 in the coaches poll now as of this week, and you are second receiving votes in the AP poll. So, like, it still feels like nationally you're getting respect that I don't necessarily know has been earned.
Yeah, because what were they favored by in this game?
A lot. I said
was it like 17 and a half?
Yeah, but like it's strange because usually we talk about the Big Ten and the SEC getting like benefit of the doubt. Oh, because of the helmet and the conference they play in and the record. I think Memphis is getting the benefit of the doubt from some of these national folks because they're 7-1 and they have Memphis on their helmet and they had really high expectations going into the year. They have not played up to the expectations that have been set, but not everybody watches and hangs on every single game that Memphis plays. They just see W or L.
Yeah, I'm going to go on something real quick, and then I'll let you kind of walk us through how can this work out in favor of Memphis as far as getting to a championship game. But last thing from me just on this game and as what we've seen over the season so far is we've talked a lot about the defense has kind of been up and down, better than normal. I say we'd probably give them that. They've been better than typical, but they've kind of had these rocky stretches or rocky games. And honestly, I kind of think that the offense is a big reason for that, because you look at what they do and they slow everything down, field position, time of possession, get out of here with the win. And we know with complementary football, like you need those big spikes from the other side of the ball, whether it's, a long return or a block, or on offense, a big play or a touchdown, or on defense, if it's a turnover or a sack or a negative play. And if you're just watching your offense go bang their head against the wall,
that's a great point you're making,
for the middle of the game, all they're doing is kicking it right back to the other team, and you got to go out there and stop them. There's nothing giving you juice. There's nothing happening that's, hyping you up as a defense. Then your ability to go out there and make plays and play complementary football is nearly shut down.
And think about it this way. I think this is just anybody. I think you play better football usually when you have less pressure on you. So obviously if they got up to a 28-point lead, I think this defense would just naturally play a little looser, take more chances. But that's where it comes in. If I'm Jordan Hankins and I have a 14-point lead in the second quarter and I see my offense is just sitting on it and trying to own the time of possession, I can't take as many chances. I can't blitz. I can't vacate parts of the field. I cannot take the chances that ultimately make my defense good. We saw it against Florida State. The best game they've played all year, they were taking chance after chance, 5, 6-man, 7-man pressures. When you are playing in a game where your offense has just shut it down for the day, you are not able to take those chances as much. You're relying on the defense too much. I agree with your sentiment here. That's a really good point, because this defense, they have played bad in certain games. There's no doubt about it. They need to win their one-on-ones. They need to be more aggressive. They need to do these types of things. But the way you call defense is so much different when your offense is shut down completely for an entire game.
Yeah.
And they get a 14 or 17 or 21-point lead. You have to be more careful. You can't let up touchdowns. So you try to keep everything in front of you. And what does another team do? Pick you apart.
Yep.
So it's got to be more complimentary. I can say that. Now, the path to the AAC Championship, let's sort of talk about this. You need more help. Navy just got their ass kicked by Notre Dame, but that doesn't help you because that's not an in-conference matchup. Navy will play Tulane. And I think this is a very interesting scenario that could unfold. Let's say Tulane beats Navy. You beat Tulane. All you three teams are tied in the AAC standings. And we'll talk about Army in a second. You would need them to lose a game to North Texas probably coming up. No, they just beat North Texas, didn't they?
Yes.
They just beat North Texas. So that seems to be mostly out of the way. But for Navy,
they play North Texas in 2 weeks. So
they play North Texas in 2 weeks. Sorry.
Their remaining conference games are Navy, UTSA, North Texas.
So let's talk about Navy first, though. If Navy loses to Tulane at home, you could get a scenario where, and you beat Tulane on the road at the end of the season, you could end up in a scenario where you're all tied with one loss, but you each have head-to-head over each other. And what would come of that, right? You would look at head-to-head first, Then I have all the tiebreakers in front of me. Go ahead and look at this. I have it saved. Then second, it would go, if there's no head-to-head result, you look at the CFP Selection Committee rankings. Then they would decide, okay, who gets into the conference championship that way. So if there's one team ranked and the other ones aren't, they get in. If you do not have that, this is where it gets kind of tricky and why Memphis needs to be smarter about how they play these games. Win by more. If it gets past that, you go to computer metrics and a composite average of selected computer metrics. These computer metrics are Connolly S&P Plus, Sports Source Strength of Record, ESPN Strength of Record, and KPI. Now, if you're trying to find a little bit of hope in that particular sort of iteration of the way this tiebreaker could go, Memphis is the second highest ranked team in the AAC according to Connolly's S&P Plus. They're at 50, Tulane's at 59, Navy's way down there after losing to Notre Dame, and Army is the highest ranked at 34. So you could take some hope in that, but I still think if you want to come out on the right side, if we get to that, fourth tiebreaker, which is quite possible, if you look at the scenarios, if you get to that fourth tiebreaker, you want to have put yourself in the best possible position with beating teams by a lot, putting up a lot of yards, doing those things, so those metrics look better. You know what I mean? So, that's why this team needs to focus on a little bit more style points. As much as it's hard to win a game in college football, I understand that. But you do have to win with some style points in the situation you're in. Yeah. Right in a second. Now, if Army, you just have to hope for a loss at North Texas because no one else is beating them.
No, really. I mean, really, best case scenario, Army beats Navy, Tulane beats Navy, you beat Tulane, you're in. Navy has two.
Well, Army and Navy doesn't count towards the conference.
Oh yeah, duh.
Yeah, so there's that. So I think really you're hoping for an Army loss on the road at North Texas or a Navy loss to Tulane and you beat Tulane.
Yeah.
So it's out there for you. You just have to do your part until you get to that Tulane game. You should be 10-1. You should be comfortably 10-1. And you should have won these next few games by a lot of points. UTSA is no good.
Nope.
Rice is no good. Beat the hell out of them, please.
Yeah.
It's just becoming – we sound like broken records, don't we? It's just at some point –
it's the same thing.
It's just the same thing every single week.
Yep. Okay, so just to break the fourth wall real quick, Kenny Stubblefield not with us this week. He is in Huntsville for the exhibition game. So I'm really, really going to break the fourth wall, and I'm going to ask Gabe a question here. Gabe, do you have a bumper ad to send us a commercial?
Oh, absolutely I do. I do. Okay. I'm the backup producer for the lovely On the Bluff podcast. For episode 100, we'll always remember how many hats I wear. I only wear one when you see me on the camera, but I will wear multiple hats behind the scenes. So let's go ahead and get to the hot three next. How about that?
Let's do it.
No, I can fight and throw hands, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, I can do that, you know what I'm saying? So I started saying, you know what, I want to get into boxing. And I just met a MMA coach, you know, and everybody call him UFC anyway, you know what I'm saying? So I just met an MMA coach. And basically, Brian Hall, bro, it's once I started training, I found out how much I didn't know, bro. I'm always a person, I believe in the truth. It's I want to, what's the truth? I believe, if you say you the truth, man, you know what I'm saying? What's the truth? And the truth was I couldn't fight at all. Zero. Zero, bro, at all. I say the first, 2 years with me just learn, processing how hard, how real it was and how, you know what I'm saying, nothing, you being angry, you feeling like everything you went through in the hood really mattered. You seeing people die, none of that mattered when I was grappling against this white kid that never knew nothing about the hood. He was choking me out. So I started saying,
Trevor had your
bro,
Tune in to The Anthony Sane Show, Wednesdays and Fridays at 12 p.m. weekly on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel.
It's going to come down to also team success.
Hey, can we stop blowing the yard?
I mean, this is so rude.
Come on, we're doing a show over here. Not even a wave or nothing. Well, I love driving through your neighborhood, by the way, Brevin, because I waved to so many people today. And I initiated the wave. I didn't even let them wave first.
You waved
I waved first. They're like, oh, hey, there's that nice man in that big-ass truck.
He's so friendly. Well, I don't like that he's going to blow all that stuff onto my. That's all right. When it's time for me to clean my yard, you know what I do?
Huh. Blow it right on back.
Blow it right on back. So
There
we got
you
a
go.
little blowing battle. Hold on.
Hey.
Whoa, hold on. Pause. Hold on. Hold on now.
Yeah, we'll just edit that
Oh,
out.
yeah.
That's fine.
Put that on loop.
That's going to be our promo this week, probably.
Tune in to the Night Court Podcast with your hosts, Rob Fisher and Brevin Knight, on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel.
What's up, everybody? And we are back with the Hot 3. No Kenny, as we mentioned. So even though episode 100, big milestone for the show, we're going to have to be rolling it just me and Gabe tonight. So, Gabe, where are we starting tonight for the Hot 3?
Let's go ahead and start in the NFL. And I want to focus this because we had two, in my opinion, biggest stories in the NFL. We have the Jets dropping to 2-6 after losing to the Patriots. They made history in that game. I'll get to it in a second.
Hilarious.
And then also we had a Hail Mary heard around the world that put the Commanders, the Washington Commanders, on top of the NFC East at 6-2 after beating the Bears. So let's start with the Jets. And I'm just going to ask, I'm going to lead you in this way. After losing to the Patriots, 25-22, Ramondre Stevenson ran it in from 1 yard on 4th and goal with 20 seconds remaining.
Yeah.
They apparently became the only team in the last 50 years to score 20-plus points, hold an opponent to 250 less yards, and not have a turnover to lose in that game. The lifetime career for those games, when you have those stats, is 750-1. The only loss was the Jets this weekend.
Insane.
But they're 2-6, and this is my question. What do they do now? Like, where does Aaron Rodgers, where does Jeff Ulbrich, where do they place the blame?
Yeah.
There's no more blame to be thrown out. You fired a coach. You've demoted an OC. You brought in Devontae Adams. You have Hassan Reddick back in the building, by the way.
Yep.
Who had been holding out for a long time. You have everything you need, and you're still losing games to the lowly Patriots.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw Mike Greenberg from ESPN. I don't know if you saw his tweets, but he's, lifelong Jet fan. Everybody knows that. He said, in a season filled with embarrassing performances, that was the worst. In a history filled with horrible seasons, this may be the worst. The Jets of 2024 are one of the truly colossal failures in recent sports memories, and it only gets worse from here. And when
From a Jets fan, too.
Yes,
That's
from a
hilarious.
Jets fan. And I saw that last night, and I was kind of thinking that's a little hyperbolic. And then I kind of started thinking about it, and I was like, the Jets have had a lot of bad years, but they were expected to be bad. This year, you get Aaron Rodgers back. You bring in Mike Williams. You eventually bring in Devontae Adams. You bring in Morgan Moses and Tyron Smith. You draft Olu Fashanu. You have this defense that's been top 5 the last couple years that you return pretty much everybody. Quinnen Williams, Sauce Gardner, all these players. Obviously, they've had a little bit of with the Hassan Reddick stuff, but that might be turning the corner. And you think, how are they here? How are they 2-6? And I think it's got to be a culture issue because the talent's there. The talent's clearly there for this team to be really good. Defensively, like I said, they've been elite the last couple of years. Offensively, you have Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, Alan Lazard, Mike Williams, Breece
Tyler
Hall.
Conklin's not a bad tight end.
Conklin's a solid tight end. Breece Hall is one of the better running backs in the league. Braylon Allen has been a very serviceable RB2 for them, and they stink. They're not good. They're not good. To me, it has to be a cultural issue with them. That's really my only explanation. I don't know if that's, does it start from the coaching staff? Does it start from Woody Johnson in the front office? Is it Aaron Rodgers and kind of his later years just being fed up? I don't really know, but a lot of trouble for the Jets right now because they've basically, in a way, done a little bit of a smaller version of what the Rams did in 2021 when they won it. They've tried to do everything they possibly could to put everything around a veteran quarterback to go win one, and they have fallen beyond flat.
And this is what's hilarious to me, at least the last 2 weeks. These were winnable games, even though they're on the road. You're playing against pretty bad offenses and the Steelers and the Patriots. And it's kind of funny, like there's this assumption, and even going into the year, oh, this defense is going to step up and still be the same caliber defense. And I thought they were through the first 6 weeks of the season. But what changed after week 6? They fired the architect of the defense, Robert Saleh. And what happens after that? You give up 37 points and 400 yards of offense to a team in the Steelers who were switching quarterbacks from Justin Fields to Russell Wilson. Then you give up 25 points to a Patriots offense who is 32 of 32 in the NFL, or probably 31 of 32.
And lost Drake May
the
early
Browns
in the game.
in there, but the Browns are a little better with Jameis Winston. But they're one of the worst offenses in the league. But you've given up 37 to the Steelers, 25 to the Patriots back-to-back weeks since you fired Robert Saleh. And there was just people downplayed that firing, man. People downplayed it. That guy had run a tight ship defensively. I know Jeff Ulbrich was the play caller, but not having Robert Saleh in there to game plan for that defense is definitely affecting that team right now. I don't think there's any question about it. So it's insane. Now, what do you think of the Hail Mary?
Insane. Jaden Daniels really wasn't expected to play until you start seeing reports like late Saturday night that getting positive signs and that he might be able to go. And then he plays in this game, and he didn't play his best game. Obviously, they had a lot of troubles in the red zone. They couldn't finish drives. Austin Seibert had to hit 4 field goals, or 5. Was it 5 field goals? Maybe. Yeah, 5 field goals. I think it was
something like that.
18 to 15 at one point. I think he hit 5 field goals.
He hit 4. He attempted 5.
Attempted 5, hit 4. So they struggled in the red zone, but when it mattered, he brought the magic. And that's, we're seeing one of those rookie seasons that we don't get that often, where it's just special. It doesn't really make sense. You can't really sum it up because this Washington team should not be 6-2. They're pretty devoid of talent. They just didn't have much. But Jaden Daniels and Dan Quinn have come together, Cliff Kingsbury, and they've sparked just one of those special seasons. And who knows where it'll end. I mean, they could flop down the stretch. But for this team to even win 6 games on the season would have been a little bit surprising. And for them to be sitting at 6-2, atop of the NFC East, with a rookie quarterback who really doesn't have much weaponry around him in the receiving core. It's really Terry McLaurin and a bunch of guys. They got rid of Jahan Dotson in the offseason, sent him to Philadelphia. Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler are obviously a good running back duo, but as far as receiving weapons, he doesn't have much. This offensive line was putrid over the last couple of years. Defense was putrid. They've still been a little bit up and down, but they've made plays when it counts, and it's really cool. It's just really cool watching one of those special seasons, and that's what Jaden Daniels is having right now.
So he ran around 40 yards on the ground. He aired it out 54 air yards, and he took up 17 seconds of time on the play. It was just impressive as hell. And like, he knew what he was supposed to do. He saw the 3-man rush with the spy at TJ Edwards. I'll get to that in a second. But he's just sort of running around. He could finally step into it. I thought Jim Nantz was perfect with that call. He's like, he can finally step into it. And he steps into it, just rips one perfectly. You get the ricochet you want. And honestly, good execution, because Noah Brown was clearly the ricochet guy. And if you practice Hail Marys, you have your jump ball guys, and you have the ricochet guy. Noah Brown was the designated ricochet guy. He was ready for it. That was well executed. They've done that in practice before. That was impressive. Now on the other side, least impressive thing I've ever seen.
Tyreek Stevenson.
That was awful coaching, awful playing, everything. I go back to the play before the Hail Mary. What are you doing letting them rip a 13-yard out route with 10 seconds to go to get themselves closer?
Yeah.
At least somebody
opportunity to do that.
Like, move up a little bit. Like, you can still have your 3 high safeties back there ready to bat a ball down, but like, don't let them just gain 13 yards to put
the sideline where you know they want to go.
Daniels, range. Could have had them backed up 13 more yards. He was not going to get that ball to the end zone.
No,
it would have ricocheted into the end zone. So that was stupid. But then on the play in question, 2 things. One, Tyreek Stevenson. He is second-year corner, pretty good.
Solid.
But he was just going after the Commanders crowd, like taunting them mid-play. Then he turns around and he was the one who ricocheted up in the air.
Who punched the ball up.
He did apologize. He's like, that can never happen again. And I don't think he'll make that mistake again.
No, I don't either.
But here's my other one. rushing 3 and having a spy with TJ Edwards. What are you spying?
Yeah,
Bring
he's
it.
not running it.
Yeah, he's not running it from 52 yards out with 6 seconds on the clock. I can tell you that right now. So what are you doing with TJ Edwards? Bring him or don't? Like, just make that decision pre-snap.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, bring at least 5 on a Hail Mary.
Don't give him time.
Don't give him time. And if you do give him time, try to have more guys out there that can get him on the ground instead of 3 big-ass D linemen.
Who had a Hail Mary attempt last week? I think it was the Vikings against the Lions, and the Lions brought the house. And the receivers weren't even able to get 20 yards down the field.
I mean, we saw it in the Florida State friggin' Memphis game.
Yeah.
They didn't let they brought 7 on like the 6 or 7 on the final play of the game on the Hail Mary. Don't let them get the playoff. No. Don't let them get the shot. Just ridiculous to me how that was. Matt Eberflus should be ashamed. Tyreek Stevenson should be ashamed. That whole defense should be ashamed. And that whole team, quite frankly, on the defensive side of the ball. That was as poorly executed situationally as I've seen anybody all year in college football or in the NFL. All right, now you ready to get some college football?
Let's do it.
A&M beats LSU, and they're on top of the SEC world. And that was interesting because you saw Connor Wigman get brought out early in the first half, and Marcel Reed comes in. He's now led them to 4 wins, quite frankly.
They look so much better with him.
They look so much better on schedule with Marcel Reed in there. And then also we'll get to Colorado in a second. But before we even get to November, they're 6-2 and they're bowl eligible. They're number 23 in the country. Now, A&M didn't think we'd be going on to week 10 and they're top of the SEC.
Did not at all. But I think it's what Mike Elko has brought. I think is it Colin Klein's their OC?
It's their OC.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mike Elko and Colin Klein. They've said, okay, we're limited at quarterback. Connor Wigman, young, just hasn't been good. Don't see him really panning out. And we talked about this several weeks ago when Connor Wigman got hurt. That honestly was the best thing that happened to them because what did they do? They relied heavily on the ground game, and they have a great rotation of running backs at the top with Le'Veon Moss. You got E.J. Smith. Is it Armani Daniels? Their other running back, they have a really solid running back room, and they've just leaned on the ground game, and that's worked for them. And honestly, it was really smart of them, in my opinion, to pull Connor Wigman and inject Marcel Reed into the lineup because they were playing their best ball with Marcel Reed, even though he wasn't expected to be the starter this year. He just fits the style that this offense has been so far this season better than Connor Wigman.
Yeah,
Connor Wigman is a traditional passer, not great with his legs. He's athletic, but he's not incredible. And if they're not going to drop back and pass 25 to 30 times a game, then Marcel Reed needs to be back there. And that's not their plan. They want to play defense and run the ball, and Marcel Reed fits that, and they're a better team with him at the helm. So it is shocking because we know how much A&M lost after Jimbo Fisher left. They had a mass exodus of 5-star players, but clearly Mike Elko and Colin Klein have that team rolling.
Yeah, Connor Wigman, if you go forward starting him, one, I think you're wrong. But two, you would be relying on one good game this year, and that was against Mizzou.
Yeah.
So I just think it's Marcel Reed's team going forward, and it should be that way. I mean, as a guy who came in as a full-time starter, he's 3-0, and in games where he had to come in relief and get them over the top to ultimately take the lead, he's 1-0, and that was in probably the biggest game of the year to date against number 8 LSU. Just impressive as hell from a redshirt freshman. Like he's got it. He's got it, whatever it is. And then it's kind of funny. You brought up Colin Klein, and I was going to bring this up, but you beat me to it. Colin Klein, Marcel Reed's better for the Colin Klein style offense just because do you remember Colin Klein at Kansas State? Does anybody remember this guy and how he 100%. Played? He would throw for 2,500 yards, but he ran for 1,000 yards on one occasion, ran for 900 his senior year. He was really good that way. They tried to utilize his legs more. So Colin Klein understands how to utilize Marcel Reed's legs. He's more comfortable with that play style. So I just think it jives well with A&M. Now, the one question you do have to ask yourself is if they get into a game later in the year or coming up soon where they get their run game shut off, the water shuts off on that run game.
Then what?
What do you do then? Can Marcel Reed then make the throws that you need him to make to go win a game? We shall see. I don't know if he's really gotten that opportunity yet, though. I don't know if it's a lack of him being able to do it or I just haven't seen it. I think it's more that I have not seen it yet. So we'll see what that looks like. But maybe that's the only way I could see Connor Wigman getting another go this year is if the run game gets shut off and Marcel Reed can't throw the ball.
If they absolutely had to throw the ball.
Yeah.
But let's transition. Let's talk a little bit of Colorado.
Yeah.
I think we were both a little bit hard on them this year. I was harsher, 100%.
I wasn't. I'm a fan.
You were a little harsh of they're probably not gonna win that many games this year. I was just more thumping my chest about that. But I've never been off the Shedeur Sanders bandwagon. I've always been a big fan of him and Travis Hunter as well. I just didn't think they had the team around them to be extremely successful. And they've had their ups and downs. It's been bumpy at times, but as of late, they've looked really, really good, especially offensively. Shedeur Sanders has really, really hit his stride. And it's not just Travis Hunter. I mean, they have weapons all over the field that he's been able to hit. So I didn't think they'd be, 6-2 at this time and already bowl eligible and ranked in the top 25 at number 23 after beating Cincinnati. But I think really since that UCF game, this team has kind of taken off and they've looked really, really good down the stretch.
Yeah, and they have Texas Tech, Utah, who's not been good, Kansas, who's not been good, and Oklahoma State, who's not been good left. I mean, we could be looking at a potential for 9 wins this year if everything sort of goes right down the stretch of the season. And again, this is why I told people earlier in the season, once I saw they did turn a corner this year defensively. They're not allowed – they shut the water off at halftime. Warren Sapp, as the new D-line coach, has done a heck of a job with that defensive front. They're not big. They're not overly athletic, but they can get after the passer. They stunt up front. They wreak some havoc. And I think they play really good complementary football with their offense because their offense is going to put up 28-plus points against just about anybody they play because they have so much talent. Their defense plays off of that the right way. So I've been very impressed. There have been some steps in the right direction with their defense. There's been some steps in the right direction with their O-line and their running game too. Isaiah Gustave had 91 yards in this game and a touchdown. With the O-line, it's not surprising. You had 4 transfers and then a starting left tackle who's a 5-star true freshman. So there was going to be a learning curve, but I think week by week they're getting a little bit better, which is all you could ask for. But again, I go back to my conversation with Coach Prime. Took over a team 2 years ago, 1-11. You sit here before we get to November at 6-2. Like, what can you say now?
No, nothing.
I understand people disagreeing with the way he got here, but here's the fact: he got here. He got here. So you can't really say that much anymore. You just can't. If this was a guy who had a different name and carried himself a little bit differently, he would be up for the Florida League right now.
Yeah.
Be up for Florida State when that opens up if Mike Norvell fails.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I just think people, and it seems like people are, because everything's quiet now around that Colorado program. I feel like a lot of people got their negative articles out and got a bunch of hits on them because everybody was hating on Colorado for a while. You've seen a lot less of that lately. And they're
can't do it anymore.
Oh, it's kind of funny. Their ratings for each game have dropped down too. Like, people are not hate watching them as much anymore.
Yeah.
But there's nothing you can really say. 1-11 to 6-2 with 4 games left to play. Tip the cap, brother. And I have a question.
Yeah.
Travis Hunter, Heisman candidacy. What do you think about that first? Just give me a quick answer. What do you think? Travis Hunter, Heisman.
I think it's legit.
Top 2 or 3?
I think he's top. Yeah, I'd say he's top 2. I'd say it's him and Ashton Genty.
Do you think Shedeur playing this well hurts him? That's my question. That's one I've been chewing on for a while.
I don't think
Shedeur probably deserves some Heisman candidacy and recognition too.
Yeah, and if he was just an offensive player, then yes, you have the, do you do the quarterback? Do you do the receiver? Or can you not do either one of them because we don't know who it truly is? But with what he does on the defensive side of the ball, plus, 60 catches, 750 yards, and 8 touchdowns so far this year, to me, there's no denying him as a candidate. I think Shedeur needs a little bit more love for how he's been playing this season, 21 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. But to me, Travis Hunter and Ashton Genty are 1 and 2. With
Ashton Genty kind of lost a little bit of momentum though this week, didn't he?
A little bit. I mean, he still had 140 and a touchdown.
No, he had 128, and he
140 total. 140 total.
Oh yeah, all purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Like the 6-week pace that he was on, beating Barry Sanders by 92 yards. It was kind of a little bit of an empty stat, just because in Game 7, Barry Sanders ran for 320. You know what I mean? So it's like that's a crazy pace to keep up. Yeah. But he still ran for 128, and I think he'll just dog the rest of the schedule.
He should.
And I wonder. I mean, I don't know if Spencer Danielson, especially with their hopes to be in the college football playoff, is going to do this, but you almost want to say when they get these blowouts, you almost want to see him stay in for the second half so he can start racking up some yards and potentially chase Barry. But at the same time, I think that's way secondary to what they're actually doing. They're in the driver's seat to be the Group of 5 representative in the college football playoff.
Yep. All right, Gabe, last topic. Let's talk a little bit of Grizzlies before we get out of here. They're currently, as we're talking, 2-1. They play tonight, so record will be different.
They're up 68-54 at half, as of right now.
Chicago, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. Talk to me about Jay Huff. What do you think so far this year? Averaging 13 points per game. What you think?
I don't know if he'll keep this up. I think holding him to a 13-point per game standard is a little insane. But when you just look at what he was able to do over the weekend against the Magic, and honestly in the game against the Jazz, he had, 13 points against the Jazz and then 18 points against the Magic in both of those wins. Like, it's funny to see the rest of the league, like the two teams you beat in the Magic and the Jazz, like their fans are looking around like, Santi Aldama and Jay Huff are the reason we're losing this game. Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
But Jay Huff got his contract converted from two-way to full-time. Happy for him. He was a guy before the season. He was talking with Jessica Benson from Grind City Media, and he basically told her, I want to stay somewhere more than a year, because he's been kicking around the G League. He's 26 years old. But I think this is another example of the Grizzlies and their ability with this front office and Zach Kleiman to find diamonds in the rough. This is 4 two-way contracts converted in a calendar year.
Yeah.
You had Vince Williams Jr., G.G. Jackson, Scottie Pippen Jr., now Jay Huff. And you get all those guys for pennies on the dollar. And they're guys that you really feel like can play roles for this team going into the next 4 years, and they're still young enough to do that. Yeah. And then, like, I saw this stat, which is amazing to me. Between the Jalen Wells contract, who was the number 39 pick, who's got some upside out of Washington State, and all 4 of those two-way contract guys, they're just above. All of their contracts are just above what a mid-level exception would be. Yeah. As far as the contract is concerned. So that's amazing. And if you add Edey to that, it's under $18 million worth of contracts for 6 guys. That's what you have to do to manage your payroll with the new CBA and the new era we're entering into in the NBA with the luxury tax blankets and repeat offender tax and everything else. So I'm just impressed as hell with what this front office has been able to accomplish with guys that were seemingly not highly thought of. A 45th pick and G.G. Jackson, a 47th pick, and Vince Williams Jr. 2 guys that got just thrown out like trash. Scottie Pippen Jr. by the Lakers and Jay Huff by the Denver Nuggets. This Grizzlies front office, they may have had some misses. Tyre Williams, Jake LaRavia, David Roddy, and we could talk about those, but some of the hits and the value they found in the second round and on their two-way contracts, it's like right up there with the Heat, with their ability to find those guys and develop them.
And it's what you have to do to be a consistent contender and consistently competitive. You can't just always rely on your stars. And I know all the John Morant stuff has been difficult, the injuries off the court, all that stuff. Jaren Jackson's dealt with injuries. But those injuries and the suspension and stuff like that has allowed this front office to really evaluate this roster, to players that they wouldn't really look towards typically. We saw so many injuries last year. That's why Vince Williams and G.G. Jackson step up. And then you just get all these different opportunities to see these guys and put them in positions that you wouldn't normally put them in because of, just the circumstances. So in the moment, no, it's not a great thing to have to deal with those, but it could set this team up for success further into the future because they've been able to find some of these diamonds in the rough.
Now, as for the Grizzlies, sitting at 2-1 with Luke Kennard, G.G. Jackson, and Vince Williams Jr. all on the injury report, you have some reinforcements coming at some point. So, pretty. I mean, you should feel pretty good about the early seed, at least the start here for the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Gabe. Well, that is going to wrap us up for episode 100. Once again, thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for dealing with us for 100 episodes so far. I hope you continue to watch On the Bluff on a weekly basis. We'll have Kenny back here next week. I know he brings in just a massive audience. So anyway, we appreciate you guys for joining. If you're watching on YouTube, you can like, subscribe, comment there. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening, you can do the same there. Also, check out the website, bluffcitymedia.co. Articles, videos, podcasts are all there. Appreciate you guys for joining us, and we will see you back here next week.
Thank you for listening to On the Bluff. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a rating and a review wherever you download your podcasts. Also, like and subscribe to Bluff City Media's YouTube page. Head over to www.bluffcitymedia.co for comprehensive coverage of Memphis sports and how you can become an insider.